내가 지키고 있던 가끔 떠오르면 괴롭던 난 망가질 차례가 됐어 넌 모르게 난 빌었지 다 망가지라고 그러면은 함께 할 수는 있겠지 내 이름도 가끔 어렵지만 빈 그릇과 반찬통을 새기 바래버린 하얀 소나타를 매일 습관처럼 되뇌이며 살고 싶어
아리랑 아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 고개로 넘어간다 힘껏 달려 멈추지 마라 세상 끝까지 가자 아리랑 아리랑 아라리요
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Iran has denied holding direct negotiations with the United States, saying it has no intention of doing so. Instead, it has laid out its own conditions for ending the war in response to a U.S. ceasefire proposal. Meanwhile, the White House insisted that efforts to end the war with Iran are gaining momentum and said President Trump will travel to Beijing for a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in mid-May, after the trip was delayed because of the ongoing conflict. At the Blue House, President Lee Jae-myung is set to meet with his aides today to address concerns over oil supply. They're expected to discuss setting a maximum price for oil in the second round of announcements scheduled for tomorrow, after the country imposed a fuel price cap to shield the economy from an energy shock. We begin this morning with Iran, which says it's reviewing a U.S. proposal to end the war, but denies any direct negotiations with Washington. Tehran has instead outlined its own conditions for a ceasefire, including sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
Iran says it has no intention of holding direct talks with the United States, but is reviewing an American proposal to end the war. According to Iranian state media on Wednesday, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stressed that exchanges of messages through mediators do not mean negotiations with Washington.
No negotiations have happened until now, but over the past few days, our American counterparts have begun sending messages through other countries that are our friends. If there are messages through others, to which we respond with our own position and demands, that is not called conversation, nor negotiation, or anything.
Earlier in the day, media reports from Iran said Tehran would reject a U.S. ceasefire offer and that the country had instead presented its own conditions for ending the conflict. A senior political security official cited by state broadcaster Press TV said Iran's five-point counterproposal includes a demand for sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical oil shipping route. Other conditions reportedly include a complete halt to what Iran calls aggression and assassinations, guarantees the war will not resume, clearly defined war reparations, and an end to fighting across all fronts involving regional resistance groups. However, the demand over the Strait of Hormuz could be a major sticking point. U.S. President Donald Trump earlier suggested the waterway could be jointly controlled by the U.S. and Iran's leadership, a proposal likely to face resistance. Meanwhile, the Associated Press reported that Iran has received a 15-point peace plan from Trump. The U.S. president said negotiations are underway, but Tehran has denied that any direct talks are taking place. 이승재, Arirang News.
Although Iran has denied engaging in any negotiations with the United States, Washington continues to insist that efforts to end the war with Iran are gaining momentum. The White House says a long-awaited meeting between President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping will take place in Beijing in mid-May, signaling that the conflict could end within weeks. Our Muniran has the details.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters on Wednesday local time that negotiations are ongoing and productive, even though Tehran has yet to accept a US-backed ceasefire framework. She declined to reveal specifics of the proposal or the talks, stressing their sensitivity, but acknowledged that some publicly reported details are inaccurate.
What I will tell you is these talks are ongoing. We're not going to get into the nitty-gritty details that have been exchanged between the United States and Iran at this time.
Despite Iran's public denials that negotiations are taking place, the White House insists that back-channel discussions are continuing. At the same time, Leavitt underscored that US President Donald Trump is prepared to escalate if Iran refuses to compromise, warning that Tehran must recognize what she described as its weakened position after weeks of conflict.
President Trump does not bluff, and he is prepared to unleash hell. Iran should not miscalculate again.
According to the US Central Command, the campaign has already hit more than 10,000 targets, dealing significant blows to Iran's military capabilities and sharply reducing its ability to carry out missile and naval attacks. On Capitol Hill, questions remain about the scope of presidential authority, after Leavitt said formal congressional approval is not currently required for ongoing operations, adding that the president wants to maintain options as the situation evolves. Uncertainty also surrounds Iran's leadership, with the White House saying it is too soon to say whether any emerging figures would be acceptable negotiating partners. Looking ahead, the administration is signaling that the conflict could be relatively short-lived. Leavitt reiterated a projected timeline of roughly 4 to 6 weeks, suggesting an end before Trump's rescheduled summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping in mid-May. The White House says that trip, delayed due to the conflict, is now back on the calendar, even as efforts to secure a ceasefire continue. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Seoul's top diplomat Cho Hyun headed to Paris yesterday to attend the G7 foreign ministers meeting after South Korea was invited as a guest country to the event. Attention is now on whether he will hold separate talks with his counterpart from the member states on the sidelines of the meeting. For more, we're joined today by Professor Andrew Miller, Head of Department of International Relations at Hangwon National University. Professor Miller, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning.
So how might the Group of Seven nations address the situation in the Middle East and the ongoing war in Ukraine?
Right. So right now, the French are holding the presidency for 2026. There's going to be several meetings through this year. There'll be a leaders meeting in June. But for now, this week, it's going to be the foreign ministers. And this is really a very critical time because we have various different conflicts happening, various different issues around the world, which are really compounding other crises as well. So, of course, top of the agenda, it's going to be the continued war between Ukraine and Russia, and really how the Russians have been intensifying their attacks. Just this week, there's been record numbers of drones sent against Ukraine, but also Russia is gaining advantage from the conflict happening in Iran due to the suspension of certain economic sanctions against Russia for 30 days. And then, of course, we have Iran, this conflict, still many, many questions, different confusing reports coming from the US and Iran on negotiations. So we don't know where this is going. But as we said, all of these are compounding the energy crisis, and the G7, really their focus is on global security and improving economic resilience. So even if the war in Iran was to end today, this energy crisis, this economic crisis, this is going to last for several months. So this is really going to be a very key agenda at the meeting.
Right, and South Korea's foreign minister, he's reportedly likely to meet U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the sidelines of that meeting. How might they discuss the issue of sending troops to the Strait of Hormuz?
So again, a very important question. And again, we still don't really have a clear strategy coming from the United States. So this is a great opportunity for Joe to meet with Rubio, again, on the sidelines, maybe have some sort of more unofficial talks between the two, so that really Rubio can clarify to the South Koreans exactly what the strategy is that the US has going forward. And this is very important because we still don't have from the US a formal request for military support from the US. And this is very important. Without that formal request, South Korea cannot go ahead. But then we also have these questions. Exactly what support is the US asking for? Is it asking for boots on the ground? Is it asking for army support so that they can send troops into Iran, or even just to some of the islands around the Strait of Hormuz or other islands like Karga Island? Or are they only looking for naval support in terms of sort of, again, shoring up the Strait of Hormuz and sort of securing access for ships for oil?
Right, it is unclear what the U.S. is actually really asking for. More than 30 countries, including South Korea, have signed a joint statement instead agreeing to work on safeguarding the Strait of Hormuz. How might diplomatic efforts help reopen the waterway?
So firstly, we should say the Strait of Hormuz, it's not completely blocked. It is technically still open. So we've had the Iranians saying this week, I'm saying just yesterday, that it's open to any non-US affiliated, so non-US hostile ships. So we are seeing actually some Russian, Chinese, Indian ships. They are passing through. The big issue is right now, it's a high risk area. The Iranians have created this situation where ships from other countries, they just simply do not want to take the risk of going through. So this 30-country coalition, this is really about reducing that risk, allowing these ships from the neighboring Arabian states to go through much safer. But of course, the Iranians, this is their big leverage. They are going to use the Strait of Hormuz. And as we've seen today, they're demanding sovereignty, maintaining sovereignty over the strait, because even when this conflict finishes, this will be their way to gain economic strength. So charging premiums. So we're already seeing $2 million premiums for ships that want to go through. And the Iranians, they'll keep doing this even when the conflict finishes.
Right, and after that G7 meeting in Paris is over, French President Emmanuel Macron is set to visit Seoul next week. And this is the first time in 11 years that a French leader is traveling to South Korea. And it comes at a time of great geopolitical uncertainty. What might be on the agenda?
So this is a very important meeting. Of course, when the leader of France comes to Korea, it's very, very important, very symbolic. And also this year, we are celebrating 140 years of official diplomatic relations between France and Korea. So that's on the agenda. But of course, security is going to be at the very top. So how can South Korea continue support, maybe not for the Iranian issue, not for the Strait of Hormuz, but I think they'll be focusing more on Ukraine. How can South Korea continue providing support, even if it's indirectly, for ammunitions, for weapons to Ukraine? So that'll be top of the agenda. But then, of course, there'll be trade issues. So wanting to boost trade between France and Korea on areas such as cosmetics, fashion, automobiles, chemicals, and so on. But we should also say Macron, he's coming towards the end of his term in office. So even though this is very important, this is still maybe somewhat more of a symbolic meeting between the two.
I see. All right, Professor Miller, thank you so much for taking the time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
President Lee Jae-myung is presiding over an emergency economic meeting this morning to mitigate the impact of the Middle East war on the local economy. He is expected to discuss with officials about updating the fuel price cap, which is set to be announced tomorrow. Potential LNG supply risk is also likely to be on the table following Qatar declaring force majeure on its gas contract with South Korea. The previous day, the Blue House set up an emergency economic situation room, and the Prime Minister's office created a pan-governmental response team. And South Korea has launched its domestically produced supersonic fighter jet. President Lee Jae-myung called the launch of KF-21 a springboard toward the country's vision to become the world's top 4 global defense powerhouses. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
It was a decade in the making, and President Lee Jae-myung hailed the first delivery of a KF-21 as a symbol of South Korea's aspiration for self-reliant defense over more than half a century.
KF-21의 양산을 통해 마침내 우리 대한민국은 땅과 바다에 이어 하늘에서까지 우리 기술과 의지로 평화를 지키는 무기를 보유하게 됨으로써 자주 국방의 위용을 떨치게 됐습니다.
He was speaking at a ceremony on Wednesday at the Korea Aerospace Industries headquarters in the southern city of Sacheon to celebrate the launch of South Korea's new supersonic fighter jet, produced using its own technology. The event was attended by related officials, foreign ambassadors, and private firms.
KF-21의 성공을 대한민국 방위산업 4대 강국 도약을 향한 든든한 발판으로 삼을 것입니다.
The commander-in-chief highlighted the jet's outstanding performance and low maintenance costs. He vowed to spare no effort and investment in nurturing the nation's defense industry and share know-how with its partners.
나아가 협력국의 세계 최고의 무기 체계뿐만 아니라 우리가 가진 기술과 개발 과정의 경험을 함께 공유하여 K-방산의 경쟁력을 더욱 높여갈 것입니다.
South Korea reportedly plans to sign a contract with Indonesia to export 16 KF-21 fighter jets. Since the blueprint was unveiled in 2001, the country officially launched the development project in 2015 and successfully completed its final flight test in January. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
A senior U.S. diplomat says Washington is conducting an extensive review of a bilateral agreement linked to South Korea's push to acquire nuclear-powered submarines. Speaking at a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing on Wednesday, Under-Secretary of State for Arms Control and International Security Thomas DiNanno said the effort follows a joint fact sheet issued in November that confirmed U.S. approval for a Seoul submarine project and outlined close cooperation, including possible nuclear fuel sourcing. He added that the Pentagon is handling infrastructure issues while the State Department reviews fuel-related matters, while also reaffirming the U.S. commitment to extended deterrence for South Korea. Meanwhile, Daejeon, often called South Korea's city of bread, is drawing crowds with a unique taxi service for bakery lovers. The so-called bread taxi takes visitors on a guided tour of the city's most famous bakeries. Our Cho Young-eun was there.
The city of Daejeon has turned its downtown bakeries into major tourist attractions, drawing visitors into a unique culinary experience. At the center of this trend is the so-called bread taxi, a unique ride that guides passengers through the city.
The bread taxi launched last November and gained popularity among brand enthusiasts as it tours famous bakeries around Daejeon City.
이 택시 운행은 어떻게 시작하시게 된 건가요?
I created this service for people who love Daejeon's bread. I hope it becomes a bucket list experience for all bread lovers in Korea and, if I may be ambitious, for people all around the world.
The driver greets passengers at the station with a big smile, accompanied by bread-themed dolls. Passengers receive a welcome kit that includes a guidebook to Daejeon's bakeries, along with tasting plates, utensils, and wet wipes. Visitors are pleasantly surprised by the menu-style guide and foldable tables similar to those on airplanes. The taxi's first stop is a bakery that's famous for its egg tarts. The driver tracks each bakery's opening hours and baking schedules, ensuring passengers can enjoy freshly made pastries without waiting long lines or missing them altogether.
이 집에서 에그 타르트 다음으로 맛있는 게 얘예요. 피자. 피자빵. 요건 나중에 집에 가서 에어프라이어로 데워 먹어도 돼요.
A stop at one of the city's largest bakeries fills visitors with excitement as they show their passion for discovering new flavors. The driver explains the best menu items at each bakery, along with tips on how to best enjoy and store different types of bread and pastries. He even recommends unique pairings such as ramen and kimchi rice bowls.
네, 조합이 너무 좋아요.
Passengers savor each combination at their own pace, fully enjoying the experience as they eagerly try the driver's top recommendations.
Once I got on, the driver was so kind, it felt almost like being with family, so I could relax, enjoy the bread, and have a great time.
As a city renowned for its rich bakery culture, Daejeon is attracting more and more visitors with these unique tourism experiences. 조영은, 아리랑 뉴스, 대전.
Good morning, I'm Choo Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces a Tuesday deadline to pass a $225 billion budget or face a snap election he is widely expected to lose. 4 weeks into the war with Iran, polls show the conflict hasn't helped him politically. A March 19th survey puts his Likud party at just 28 seats, down from 34, leaving his coalition 10 short of a governing majority. The war is also costing Israel's economy roughly $1.6 billion every week, with schools shut and workplaces only partially open. If the budget fails to pass by the March 31st deadline, Israeli law would trigger an election within 90 days when the Netanyahu's own party fears he cannot win. A Los Angeles jury has delivered a verdict against tech giants Meta and Google, finding them negligent for designing social media platforms that addicted and harmed a child. The jury on Wednesday ordered Meta to pay $4.2 million and Google $1.8 million to a 20-year-old after finding that Instagram and YouTube deliberately used features like infinite scroll to get her hooked on the platforms from a young age, placing profit over the safety of children. The case now sets the terms for thousands of similar lawsuits waiting in California courts. Both companies plan to appeal. Separately, a New Mexico jury on Tuesday found Meta violated state law by misleading users and enabling child sexual exploitation across its platforms. The United Nations on Wednesday passed a floor vote declaring transatlantic slavery the, quote, gravest crime against humanity. Ghana proposed a resolution which was passed in a 123-3 vote at the General Assembly, with the U.S., Israel, and Argentina voting against it. The UK and over 50 other countries abstained. The non-binding resolution calls for formal apologies, the return of stolen artifacts, and financial compensation for the forced enslavement of at least 12.5 million Africans across more than 4 centuries. First Lady Melania Trump walked a humanoid robot named Figure 03 down the White House hallway on Wednesday, introducing it as the first American-made humanoid guest in White House history. Speaking at the Fostering the Future Together summit, Melania Trump called on governments and tech companies to deploy AI directly in classrooms. That same day, President Trump appointed the CEOs of Meta, Oracle, and NVIDIA NVIDIA to a new White House AI Policy Council, declaring that artificial intelligence is America's defining battleground against China.
Of collaborative dialogue.
It's going to be another day that really feels like spring. Temperatures will rise well above average, with Seoul reaching around 20 degrees Celsius this afternoon, going up about 7 degrees higher than usual and staying that way through Sunday. But please beware of large temperature differences. In terms of air quality, the level will stay in the bad range in most regions. And when the level goes too high, make sure to wear a face mask. Meanwhile, continuous mild and dry conditions are raising the wildfire risk. A nationwide fire alert is currently at the caution level, so please be careful with anything that could start a fire. And this afternoon, most regions will see highs in the 20s. Seoul getting up to 20 degrees, Daegu topping out at 23 degrees Celsius under sunny skies nationwide. Now, warm and sunny skies stay with us through Saturday, then rain is expected early next Monday.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Arirang TV on its 30 years jubilee. You have a global presence and the mission to connect the world, to make us understand each other better. And I think that from my perspective, you're doing a very good job, and you are also contributing to increased understanding between Sweden and Korea. So once again, congratulations and good luck with your continued work. Thank you.
A country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and...
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
Traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are New Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Thursday, March 26th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Jian. Have you, and also joining us with us.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, and both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So as we head into the end of the work week and the weather starts to warm up, we're turning to a classic part of campus life here in Korea. So many Korean universities have what's called MT, short for membership training, essentially a college orientation trip for freshmen. It typically takes place around this time of year as the school year in Korea begins in March. So it's a chance to step away from campus, break the ice, and really bond with your fellow classmates, often for the very first time. From group games to late night conversations, it's all about building friendships and creating those early college memories. So Jian, what was your freshman college orientation like or experience like?
Well, my first year in my university, the MT's orientation trip, or I should say a bonding trip as a first year student, was honestly quite awkward indeed. I didn't know anyone, I didn't know a single soul over there, and it was a bit of a shock at first. I went when I was a first year undergrad and also again during my postgrad studies. It's quite a uniquely Korean tradition, I must say, and it's often the first time students try alcohol as adults, meet a whole new circle of friends, and are gently introduced to the senior junior culture. We call it 선후배, a culture. In a way, it's rather charming mix of social connection and bonding as well. You learn how to navigate group dynamics, of course, and share a few laughs and perhaps survive a slightly chaotic evening or two during MT. So quite an experience, both memorable and at times delightfully overwhelming. So messy at times, but that's half the fun, doesn't it?
I think it's like the first time when kids can actually kind of let go, enjoy themselves, which is why it can get a bit crazy. So what about you, Julian?
Well, the concept of MTs do not exist in the US, so my freshman year experience was very different from what Julian just described. In the US, orientations are just a short event during the day where you go sit in the auditorium, listen to someone speak about the class registration, campus events, or anything related to school registration, and then you split off into groups and register for your first semester classes. And although MTs don't exist in the US, I remember they're having like week-long campus events where you would go meet people, check out events hosted by different campus organizations that are being hosted as well. It's a really good time to explore different campus activities, clubs, and meet new people. I really look back fondly this time because I've actually met a lot of lifelong friends I still keep in contact with to this day.
So while the format is a bit different, the core idea of meeting people and finding your place on campus still seems to be the same wherever you are. So it sounds like whether it's MT or campus events, those first connections really do have a lasting impact. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. Spring is a season for outings, and college campuses are no exception. As the new school year kicks off, universities across Korea are gearing up for their freshman orientation trips, an age-old tradition known as MT. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at how these college orientations have evolved, from what they look like for millennials to how similar traditions play out overseas, and how MT culture is making a comeback today, possibly in a very different form than before. Just as we saw in the video, MT is just about fun. It's become a snapshot of how campus culture and student life have evolved over time. So let's take a look beyond Korea and see how that experience compares. So Julian, you obviously went to school in the States, so how does college life look like for Gen Zs in the US?
Yeah, so I personally had a lot of fun being a college student in the US, but many Gen Zs in the US, and I'm sure any Gen Z in any country can relate to this, but many of us lost a lot of our college years to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was frustrating because I spent half of my college years online, and many of us felt it was super unfair because we were robbed of that fun social opportunities that you really only get as a college student, and we still had to pay for full tuition. So it was a really frustrating time because of the pandemic. But despite that, I still really value my experience. I spent my college years meeting a lot of people, traveling a whole bunch, and working a lot. My time as a university student was the foundation I really needed to become the person I am today. And because of that experience, I really feel like I'm becoming the adult I am now. But I think compared to the average Korean university student's experience, my academic career is different. For starters, MTs just didn't exist, and I guess that general structured group culture didn't really exist in my space. So as a student, whether it be a project or a job or even a last-minute trip I wanted to take myself, I felt so free to do what I wanted for myself. And as soon as I turned 18, I really took advantage of taking control of my own life and seizing any exciting opportunity.
Right, I mean, I think that sense of freedom is what really stands out. A very different vibe from the structured group culture we often see here. So let's rewind a bit and hear what it was like for a different generation right here in Korea. So what was college life like for millennials?
I do realize that. I think it was quite centered on group activities, collective ones, and shared experiences as well. So there was a strong sense of belonging, and people naturally moved together as a collective group. Each university had its own cheering culture, often with organized chants and performances, especially during sports events like Yeongojeon or Goyeonjeon, Yonsei University, or Korea University Games. It created a real sense of identity and pride of their schools, and students would easily mingle even if they didn't know each other. There was a very open and inclusive atmosphere inside the campus. Departments often set up their own pop-up bars and invited students from other majors, other schools, and which made it quite lively and social. It was a lovely way to meet new people and build connections across faculties, different schools, different majors. And after exams or events, it was common to gather for a group get-together. Sometimes professors joined, and orientation trips and MTs were essential. And even during free periods, if you don't have any classes, people would naturally gather in the department lounge around without making any special plans. It was always easy to find someone to talk to and spend time with, so you were never on your own.
That sounds really nice.
Indeed.
It sounds like a more, I guess, tight-knit, community-driven campus life here in Korea. So now with activities picking up right after the pandemic, MT culture seems to be now making a grand return. So how do Korea, specifically college orientations today, compare to those of the past year?
It's a very good question. As with many events that were paused during the pandemic, as you mentioned, Sang-jun, MTs are returning as well now in 2026. Reservations in places long known as MT hotspots in Korea, such as Chuncheon in Gangwon province, Gapyeong and Cheongpyeong in Gyeonggi-do province, are on the rise again. In Korea, late March into early April has traditionally been MT season. It's early spring now, so the scenery is quite lovely, which adds to the whole experience. And back in the day, we would go all grocery together, shopping together, and buy meat and drinks for the evening and travel by train or bus sometimes. And once we arrived, it was all about eating and drinking. Grilled meat followed by kimchi stew or instant noodles to finish. It was almost a kind of a ritual. When I organized MTs or the bonding trips, I also included various activities. I was actually the student council president, so
wow.
I took charge of the MT. I did what I wanted to do. I actually invited a instructor that was the recreation instructor, and added some activities like programs like using ATV, a quad bike program, rides, which everybody absolutely loved it, and also made some T-shirts and some jackets, university jackets with logos on it.
Wow.
Yeah, people love it, and we get also organize some donations for that, for the payment. So these days, while things are a lot more organized and comfortable these days, as you may know, the essence remains the same, bringing people together, sharing simple moments and creating lasting memories. So very little sleep is involved, but plenty of memories when you go back.
And it's amazing how you played a huge pivotal role in helping those freshmen create those memories.
Did I? Well,
hopefully maybe you'll do one for our news gen team as well.
Oh yes, lovely. That will be lovely.
Right? So it really feels like the spirit of MT is still there, just with a more modern, relaxed twist. And that shift in vibe seems to especially noticeable among students today. So how has the atmosphere of college orientations changed for students, I guess, today?
Yeah, well, these days, even the upperclassmen in college, many of them actually didn't experience MTs, the traditional MT that we were talking about. So the atmosphere, I guess, has changed from the past because MTs are no longer mandatory and there's no pressure to join. So if people don't want to join, they simply just choose not to join. And I've also heard that people used to drink a lot of MTs, but that's not really the case anymore because people can drink or they can choose not to drink, and that's just completely their prerogative. In the past, drinking games were very common, but now it's a little more diverse. MTs are organized with things like board games or escape room style activities that people can choose to participate in. Even though I was personally a college student in California, I actually had the chance to study abroad here in Korea, and I experienced the MT myself. And needless to say, it was quite the culture shock for me because I had no idea what to expect going in, but I guess the atmosphere really did change because if I didn't want to drink, I didn't have to drink. I didn't feel pressure to drink. And there was so many diverse things that we could have done. There was a karaoke machine, a board game, a bunch of group activities that were hosted by the leaders, and barbecue grills with ramen. It was so good, and it was a fun experience, but after that experience, because I really value my sleep, I don't know if I can ever go to one again.
So what was the biggest culture shock, do you think?
I think just like the whole group culture, everyone getting together to spend all night together playing games and having fun. That's just something I've never really done. The only time I really pulled all night in college was to study for finals. So
fair enough.
It was quite the fun experience.
So I feel like that is a really pretty big shift from something that once felt almost mandatory to a much more flexible, choice-driven experience. So it sounds like today's MT is less about pressure, more about participating on your own terms, which probably makes it more inclusive and enjoyable for a wider range of students. So we also wanted to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking what are your views on MTs. So here's what the results showed. So a slight majority, 55%, said they would like to take part. Meanwhile, 23% felt it should disappear altogether, reflecting a fairly divided view on its place in campus life today. And 22% said they don't mind the tradition, but wouldn't personally attend. So the results are quite telling. While a majority are still open to having that experience, nearly half are either hesitant or totally against it, which really highlights how attitudes towards orientations are really shifting. So it seems like the tradition is no longer given, but some students are actively re-evaluating. And to get a more personal perspective on this, we're going to speak with someone who attended college in Korea. That conversation is coming up right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Lee So-yeon, who attended a college orientation trip after the pandemic. So hello, So-yeon. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So So-yeon, what was your college orientation experience or your MT experience like?
So I actually managed to attend an MT, or what you call orientation, with my rock band society when I was already a senior. And it was surprisingly laid back. So I didn't see any of like extreme drinking culture people would often describe from back in the day. And instead, it was more like fun icebreakers and party games. There's like absolutely no pressure. Everyone just went their own paces. And of course, being a senior, obviously it was so awkward, and I could have quite matched the like reckless energy of the 20-year-old freshman, even though I'm for a more like energetic side. So I paced myself as well. Once younger student called it a night, the atmosphere like shifted to more mature setting. And we have what I call like exclusive perks, like some secret whiskeys, acoustic guitar sessions, because it's a rock band society, and late night runs in search for ice cream. So overall, I'm really glad I didn't graduate without experiencing a proper orientation, and it was a great way to wrap up my college years.
Nice. Yeah, I think we all assume that you enjoyed a lot. So, then how do you think your college life differs from that of previous generations?
So since I went to college in the year 2020, you could get a hint that I mentioned that I managed to join MD in my late years in college. So, and which would be more accessible back in the days. And of course, there was no large-scale festivals, and while our student council worked incredibly hard to like organize gatherings, the restrictions made it really tough. And for my entire first semester, I didn't even set foot on campus. I stayed on my hometown because the dorms were closed. And later, the university tried a hybrid approach where half of the students were online and other half was physically in the classroom, but it never quite clicked. So like, let's be honest, like given the choice, very few students would trade the convenience at home for a commute to a lecture hall. So I'd say the two biggest differences were the lack of spontaneous social gatherings, and number two, online classes.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing your experience. To wrap up this conversation, I wanted to ask you, what part of pre-pandemic college orientation culture do you wish you've experienced?
Well, first, I have to say, you can't miss what you never had. So like the 2-year gap essentially de-schooled us on what an MT or like social gathering even was. And all we have was some bad, sometimes negative images from like massive drinkings from the media, or some like epic stories from my seniors. But my only real regret is like missing those like early stage social interactions and the scale of a proper campus festival. But aside from that, it is what it is. We cannot even change the past. It's all about how we embrace the experience we did have. So, and if I'm being honest, like there's at least one silver lining. I think I quite benefit from some generous grading during the peak of the pandemic. So I'm taking the wins where I can find them.
I mean, I'm glad you at least got to experience it as an upperclassman. So I'm glad you had that experience. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you so much.
So we just heard from a student who attended a college orientation trip after the pandemic, sharing what her experience was like, how her college life differs from previous generations, and what aspects of traditional MT she feels like she may have missed out on. Now, some of the defining features of college life in Korea include club activities, group blind dates, often called meetings here in Korea, and the idea of dating someone from the same school as you, called campus couples here in Korea. So, Jun, what did college life and dating look like for millennials in Korea?
So besides orientation, besides MT, we had lots of fun and activities inside the campus. So for millennials in Korea, university life was all about connecting with others and experiencing things together. As I mentioned, when it came to clubs, or we call it 동아리 in Korean, many students chose activities like music, dance, or leisure, mainly to enjoy their hobbies and, of course, to make friends. As for meetings, it's not about official meetings, it's about group blind date or setup. They were quite popular. They were usually organized or arranged through a mutual friend, and people joined not just for dating, but simply to meet new people and socialize and drink together. Friends who were already in relationships would often introduce their partner's friends to their own friends. There were often group settings with light-hearted games and a very lively atmosphere. And then there was the idea of CC or campus couples that I have never experienced in my life, and I'm not going to do that again. Well, dating someone from the same university or even the same department was quite common. It made everyday campus life a bit more exciting and delightful, though of course breakups could make things very awkward inside the campus when you take classes. So your campus life will feel like a dream, but it could be a nightmare at the same time.
Right. I mean, it does sound like a very social, experience-driven, many different experiences, good and bad, I guess.
That's right.
Campus life, meeting people and having fun were just as important as anything else. And now it sounds like priorities may have shifted quite a bit for today's students. So how does this, Julian, compare to Gen Z's approach to college life these days?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, a lot of Gen Z missed out on many of the important, crucial social opportunities that you're supposed to get in college due to the pandemic. There were campus events actually held through Zoom, but honestly, no one really participated in those. Social events held remotely just don't have the same weight as in-person events do, so no one really felt super motivated to attend. But outside the years where remote learning was prevalent, I think it's similar to how millennials socialized in college too. There are many college organizations are a great source of socializing as well as meeting people that share similar interests with you. And many students meet others through clubs or various campus events. I personally made a lot of friends through my work, campus clubs, events, and even my neighbors in my apartment complex. And I genuinely just think it's case by case with how people socialize and make friends in college. People have their own comfort levels, so I think college is the perfect way to discover what your preferences are and how to meet people on your own terms.
Very true. So that is a noticeable shift from social experience-driven choices to a much more practical and goal-oriented approach, especially when it comes to building skills and networks for the future. And it's with those changing priorities that campus culture itself seems to be evolving. So what new campus trends, Chun, would you personally like to see or see go?
Well, Soyeon and Sang-Chun also mentioned that there was no pressure of drinking inside the campus.
That's a good one.
Yes. And even in my time, there's no, as I mentioned earlier, that Gen Z missed out a good portion of a college social life in COVID-19. And today, that even in my life, there wasn't a real strong culture of forcing students to drink. And I believe that's still largely the case these days. But having said that, I do think that it's quite important to continue moving away from any kind of pressure that they feel inside the school. But what matters most is creating an environment where people can feel comfortable, enjoyable and delightful will be the best thing. And above all, I do believe that safety should always comes first, so that everyone can simply enjoy the experience in a positive and respectful way. It's about making memories, not mistakes.
Right. I mean, I can personally really relate to that. I don't like drinking. I don't like the taste of alcohol. So I think it's really important to not feel like you're pressured to drink to be able to have fun. So what about you, Julian?
Yeah, everything Julian said, I 100% agree with. One of the reasons why I personally really value my time as a student was because I felt free to explore whatever I wanted. This was a time where I started my career and worked with people that I gained so much inspiration from. If I didn't go to college, I wouldn't even be pursuing the career or even make the shift such as moving to Korea. I wouldn't have have been able to do that without my college experience. So that's why I really think it's important to emphasize the importance that college is a time for one to make their own decisions and to explore what's best for their own personal and professional growth without any external pressure. This is a time to challenge your own beliefs that may have been pushed onto you when you were younger. So I think creating a positive as well as a respectful environment where like-minded individuals can meet together and discuss and grow is crucial to have a fruitful college experience.
Well said. So college traditions may evolve, but the goal remains the same, helping students connect and find their own place. From classic MT trips to more flexible, modern formats, campus culture continues to reflect each generation's priorities. However it looks, those early college moments still shape memories and friendships that will last well beyond graduation. So that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. When News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Jihyun.
Thanks for having me.
Coming in. Also Julian.
Thank you for also having me today.
And to our viewers, thank you for watching, and we hope you find your own version of a school orientation with good people and great memories today. We are News Generation.
해금은